The Windsor Carlton guest accommodation stands in Ventnor, on the south coast of the Isle of Wight. As part of Alexandra Gardens, the story of Number 5 illustrates the late Victorian expansion of the town.
Alexandra Gardens was built on the site of the mill and the mill pond, quite a vast area. It included part of Pier Street going up to the shops there. Around about 1868, a developer, Harry May, who actually lived in Bonchurch, decided he would like to buy the mill property and develop it. Theodore Ridley Saunders was commissioned by Mr May. He was quite prolific, not only in Ventnor, but of the whole of the island at that time. Their houses were built in the Gothic Revival style, at the time quite popular. Gothic Revival was in and out of fashion, came back into fashion during the late Regency period and sort of went out of favour a bit, but it started coming back in again in the Victorian times. And Theodore Ridley Saunders sort of picked up on that. He obviously liked that style with the turrets type roof line. This stairway is pine, would have been originally pitch pine. I just want to point out the panels here. They're all hand painted to make them look like burr walnut. And because it was a middle class home, they couldn't actually afford to buy the more expensive wood, so they used to paint the wood to make it look expensive. And I'm quite proud that we still have this. This is an art form that you don't really see today. It's in the Gothic Revival style, and we're really very pleased that this is the only surviving staircase in this street that is more or less in its original condition. Of course, it's had chips with bags and children on it, so we've touched it up here and there.
So that's how they were painted originally in 1870 or
yeah,
whatever?
1880s,
yeah.
Well, has it been done since then?
No. It's been cleaned up and varnished, so it's probably darker than it was.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Harry May, he died, and he left all his debts to his wife. She sold off the building leases, and Drudge and Wheeler built the houses here on the site. But of course they couldn't sell them because the country was in deep recession. They were rented out, had a 1,000-year lease as lodging houses. Each floor was probably a suite of rooms, and I tend to think of Sherlock Holmes, with his suite of rooms and his lodging lady who used to look after him. That type of thing would have happened. This would have been designed as the drawing room, and the room below as the dining room. These were rooms where they entertained guests, and that's why they were a bit more fancy. Something to point out with this coving is very high Victorian, even though the building itself is Gothic. It's a typical acanthus leaf there pattern, high Victorian, and it's interlaid with different flowers. These were the rooms that guests would come into, and they were all done so to look showy and to show off. Of course, as I've said before, they were never used as a gentleman's residence, so they were just used really as just rooms for lodging. By the time these were built, they weren't meant to have live-in servants. They were sort of came into work, and they all worked in the basement area. But these were meant for the family members. The skirting boards are not so high. There's no ceiling roses or cornicing. They're quite plain. I just would like to point out Lavinia down here. The house number 4 is named after her, Villa Lavinia Smith. Her and her niece, Carrie, were both widows, and they both worked for Joe Lyons in London. And Lavinia, she was a manageress, and she used to go around managing her little shops using a pony and trap. But when she retired, Joe Lyons Corporation said to her that if she would like to find herself a guest house to run, that Joe Lyons would pay for it for her. And she found number 4 next door, and both her and Kerry sort of ran it as a guest house. But there was one condition, that she had to not only take in people for holidays, but also she had to take in German Jewish students. And remember, this is just before the Second World War.
Yeah.
They never returned to Germany, and they were all moved on. A lot of them went into Switzerland. It wasn't until 1937 that number 5 became a guest house, and at the time it was called Enville House. Shortly after that, around the late 30s, number 5 was joined with number 6. Mr. Phillips at the time owned number 6, and number 5 became available. He bought it and joined the two houses together. This house was joined to Dean House by a doorway behind that mirror, and there's also another doorway up in the one of the top rooms upstairs. When Mrs. Phillips died, Mr. Phillips moved into this house and he sold Dean House off. And when he died, it was bought by Mr. and Mrs. Carver. And they, just shortly after they bought this house, number 4 became available, so they bought that up and connected this house with the house next door, which at the time was called the Windsor. So they put the two names together to make it the Windsor Carlton. But that's semi-detached, as you probably noticed. So there was a small bridge there, it was covered over to join the two houses together. And it was only joined there and at basement level. It became evident to us that the amount of work that needed to be done on the properties was quite a lot, and it needed a lot of investment to bring them up to modern standards. We decided that maybe the best way forward would be to sell number 4 and reinvest that money into number 5. So in 2008-9 we separated the building after receiving the planning permission to do so, and we sold number 4 off and reinvested some of that money back into number 5. We decided to open for English Heritage Open Days because to share with others what we had found out. This information will be lost over time, and we've actually put it all into the website so that it could be there for forever.